Hello, everyone. I am the Comics Kid 2099, and I am joined by my compatriot and ally, Connor Nielsen. Connor, how are you doing today?
I am good, Comics Kid. I'm doing very well. How are you doing this fine Monday?
I am very well, and we are doing a very timely podcast today. We are talking about the new release, Black Widow, which came out like probably half a year ago or more. I only got around to watching it because it is on Disney Plus, and Connor allowed me to use his account to watch it. Thank you, Connor. And by now, anyone who's listening to this podcast has probably already seen the movie, but if you haven't, this is a spoiler podcast. And so spoilers ahoy right now. Connor, why don't you tell us a little bit about the movie Black Widow?
Yeah, Black Widow, a movie that came out so long ago, an entire theatrical window, lawsuit drama, began, went on forever, and ended before we actually talked about it. This is a movie that is the first film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4. It is directed by Kate Shortland. It stars Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Mac, and Rachel Weisz. So this tells the story of Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow from the Avengers movies. This is told in between the events of Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War, because we have to do a sort of prequel-ish story with this character, because in case you didn't watch the highest grossing film ever, Avengers Endgame, she died in that. So now that her contract got re-upped and she could renegotiate terms, now she is actually allowed to headline a movie. So we get this sort of weird retroactive prequel sort of thing that answers the burning question we all have been dying to know. How did Black Widow get that vest in Avengers Infinity War? So what ends up happening in this movie is Natasha is on the run, and then she gets in contact with her sleeper cell family of Russian secret agents from the mid-90s. Her surrogate dad, played by, hold on. She has a surrogate sister played by Florence Pugh, and she is also a Black Widow who was trained in the Red Room. But then what ends up happening, so she's a Black Widow. She gets broken from her programming by Magic Mist, and then Yelena is her name, and then she gets in contact with her surrogate sister from the mid-90s, Natasha, and says, yo, I need your help. So then Natasha says, okay. And then because this is all about family, a la Fast and the Furious, they break out their surrogate father, played by David Harbour, who's sort of like a Russian Captain America, who was at one point Red Guardian, before becoming a sleeper agent. And then they also need to go bring in Rachel Weisz into the fold. And they're there so that they can stop the Red Room from doing its thing, because Mac from Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a big sexist pig, and he needs to be stopped. That was a really long synopsis. I'm sorry. But Comics Kid, how did you feel about Black Widow?
I thought this movie was very mediocre. I remember it got a lot of negative buzz when it came out, and I can't speak for everyone, but I wonder if maybe it got such a harsh reaction because of people are maybe confusing mediocrity with actual like horrible. Like you and I both really hate the movie I, Frankenstein. I don't think this is as bad as I, Frankenstein. But I think because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been overall pretty solid, I think that whenever you do get a movie that doesn't quite stick the landing, people are going to over-exaggerate how bad it is. I don't think it's a great movie. I don't even think it's good. I think it's just fine. A very average, middle-of-the-road movie. Having said that, I'm probably going to spend a lot of this podcast complaining. But overall, I think this is just a kind of okay movie.
Yeah, I think we are probably going to be in alignment on this one. I feel pretty much exactly the same. Average and middle of the road is as perfect a description of this movie as I think there is. I think a lot of the movie, like a lot of people feel this way, and it's really hard to like not feel this way. I don't think where it's hard for this to not feel like a retroactive. We got to come up with something because Scarlett's been a team player for 10 years, so let's give her her own movie. And And so like all the events of this stuff happening just sort of feel sort of slight and inconsequential, but because this is a Marvel movie, it needs to go big on the action. So all of it just sort of feels kind of canned and a little I don't know, like it sort of feels like it's trying to be a story within the margins of a time that we already kind of lived through. And so it kind of makes this sort of feel like canonical fan fiction to a certain degree. Um, what I like about this movie a lot is I really do like the first act of the movie quite a bit. I think that it has the best action sequences. I think it does a decent job of sort of painting in Natasha's life and her world and what it's like for her to be on the run. But and this is actually something that I know you have not seen Shang-Chi yet, but I feel like almost exactly like Shang-Chi, after they do a good job of establishing the central character with cool action scenes and world building for that character's world, the character sort of gets roped up in this story that has a lot to do with family, and their family also happens to have a lot of Marvel Cinematic Universe lore that we need to fill in. So the main character just sort of becomes a character to like go from location to location to get exposited at. And then by the end, like I kind of feel like the main characters become a supporting character in their own movie. And I feel that way about Shang-Chi, and I feel that way about Black Widow. And in the case of Black Widow, this feels like it's trying to, get everything set up so that Yelena can take over as the moniker of Black Widow moving forward. And that certainly appears to be the case in the post-credits scene. I will say though, I think the movie actually looks all right. This is the first Marvel. This is completely like nerdy stuff, but as far as like inside baseball with physical media releases, this is the first time they've released one of these movies on 4K where it was an actual 4K digital intermediate. So it's not an upscale; it's actually in 4K resolution, and like the colors and clarity are like really really cool. So I like the way this looked a lot on disc. This is now the second time I've seen it. So those are my thoughts on Black Widow. Where do you want to go, Comics Kid?
Okay. Do you think that this movie, being a prequel where everybody knows that the main character dies, do you think the movie was kind of doomed from the start? Because I'm trying to think of an example where someone can go back and watch a prequel and feel like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, I'm trying, like with X-Men First Class, when that movie came out, everyone was debating on if it was a reboot or an actual prequel. And so I feel like with that, you didn't really know what was going to happen. Maybe we're going to have like 3 movies where Magneto and Charles are working together before they split. Or maybe this is going to, tidily set everything up for X-Men 1. Who knows? With Black Widow dying, like I feel like you're kind of writing yourself into a corner, and everyone is going to say who cares because they already know what happens to her. And I'm not sure if that's a valid criticism or not.
Well, yeah. So I guess in the sense of like this being a prequel, what makes it so weird is that we know what happens because it's a prequel in the sense that this is not exploring Natasha before we ever met her. It's a point where we have met her, but
Mm-hmm.
we also there's still more for life left. So it's not like issue -1 of Black Widow. This is like issue 16.5 of
Mm-hmm.
Black Widow. And so it's a little odd in that way because when you're talking about First Class, there's some confusion as to whether or not that was a reboot or a prequel when that was coming out. And I think a lot of that did come down to, well, we never really explored the X-Men universe before Y2K. And when it comes to like Twin Peaks, when we have the Fire Walk with Me prequel film, we've heard about what happened before Cooper came to town, and we got to see it for like half a day. But seeing and living in Twin Peaks while Laura was live was something we never did actually see. And so this is sort of a strange prequel. And even the only other prequels in this universe that we've seen before are First Avenger and Captain Marvel. Those are set well before Iron Man. So I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like this is a little bit of an odd thing. I think just the strangeness of where this is placed does, I think, kind of make it, an odd experience just in general for a movie. So I think like when you say like, is it a fair complaint? Like I guess so. Like if your audience is a little confused on where they want to place, the story, I kind of get it. But I also think like for a prequel that they should have gone with, um, I think the reason I like the first act so much is because of how kind of small scale it is. And I think as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes a little bit less plausible that this happens. Like, I don't know. Like, that's what makes it feel like canonical fan fiction to me.
Yeah. And I guess I never really thought about like Captain Marvel because we knew like Nick Fury has the pager in Infinity War, and so we know that she's coming in the present day. But at the same time, this is a character we've never met before, and so you still watch Captain Marvel and be like, oh, she's a Kree warrior. Like this is interesting, and like you're still going on this journey with her, and all you know is that she met Nick Fury, or maybe not even that. Maybe Nick Fury got the pager from somebody else. You don't know really any of the plot stuff that's going to happen in Captain Marvel, and so I feel like with both that and Captain America especially, where most people who watched that movie probably didn't know anything about Captain America, and we weren't told a lot about him in the pre-Captain America movies. So I do feel like this is a odd beast in that like we know where she's going, and it's not like you said, it's not even set before Iron Man 2. And I don't know if that would have been a better choice or not, but I feel like I heard a lot of people, maybe I didn't hear this as much, maybe I was just imagining this, but it seemed like there was a lot of like ho-hum, who cares? And I want to believe that there is a way that you can do a prequel and make people care. Because when people say like, I already know where that character ends up, so I don't want to watch it, my response to that would be, okay, then why would you bother rewatching a movie that you love? Like,
Yeah.
if there's anything that you enjoy watching, you're going to rewatch it again, and you know what's going to happen, but you still enjoy rewatching it. And so I think you can make a prequel work, but I don't think that I could say that this one necessarily worked.
I agree with you. Yeah, and that's something I feel like it's a conversation we've had off the air before. Is where, yeah, I completely agree. I don't necessarily think predictability is an issue. I know there are some people who have made video essays where the only real true stakes that a movie can have is, oh no, is this character going to die or not? I think that's a remarkably stupid opinion to have personally, because, like you said, why bother rewatching a movie you really, really like if you already know what's going to happen? I think when it comes to this movie, a lot of the focus just isn't on Natasha, and that's a little bit of a letdown. So much of the interest seems to be on Yelena and the sort of world of the Red Room and sleeper cells and like all this stuff that by the end are just kind of like the threats neutralized and taken care of. And so it the reason I think this feels inconsequential is because this doesn't feel like it really makes a huge impact on Natasha.
Yeah, I was going to say I feel like Florence Pugh is carrying this movie. I think she's easily the best actor here, and I have enjoyed David Harbour and Evie from The Mummy and other movies, but I don't think that they're turning in great performances here. And I will even give them the benefit of the doubt and say, and we will have to go through an entire spiel about the family. I'm sorry, the family, but. I think that they're getting contradictory like directions on like this is what your character is, and so like David Harbour especially, but to a lesser extent the mom. I think they're both like trying to play two different characters depending on what part of the movie you're in, and so they're not giving great performances. And I don't think that's their fault. I think they're doing the best they can, and it's just not working. And you're right. I think that Natasha feels more like a side character in this movie by the time you get to the end. And I wonder if that was because they were saying to themselves, well, we can't do anything too crazy with her because she has to end up here by the time you get to Infinity War. And so I hate it because I think you could have done a really interesting, fascinating Black Widow movie. Now, part of the problem may be that the MCU is known for being kind of lighthearted. The one movie I would say that's the least lighthearted is The Incredible Hulk, and a lot of people do not like that movie, or they find it forgettable. Like you can say The Incredible Hulk, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's part of the MCU." I don't even think it's on Disney Plus. That's how little people acknowledge that movie. But Black Widow, the thing is, when you find out about her past in previous movies, it sounds pretty dark. Like what you find out in Age of Ultron sounds really messed up. And I would find myself wondering, how are you going to, if you're going to separate her from the rest of the MCU and tell her own story, how are you going to do that in the air quotes MCU formula where you are inserting the hilarious jokes and stuff? I'm all over the place. So tell me if you want to zero in on any of these things I've brought up. But like, I
Okay.
feel like tonally, this movie is such a disaster because the Red Room is supposed to be this really dark, scary thing where women are losing their autonomy and they are treated more like commodities than they are human beings, and even more so at this point because Florence Pugh even says like when you were in the Red Room, it was like psychological conditioning, and now they're using a chemical, and so all of that could have made this be the darkest MCU movie. And I'm not saying that as a positive or a negative thing. Dark doesn't necessarily mean good, but it is weird to me that this movie is trying to do joke stuff with this source material.
Yes, so the tone is odd. I would agree. Because on the one hand, I understand that there are people, a lot of people, where they kind of handle their trauma or they handle uncomfortable situations by trying to deflate the situation with humor.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem I have with the Marvel universe right now is that's every character. Every character does that, and it's just a little tiring. And I feel like I don't know. A lot of people have been crying foul on MCU humor for a while, and I've always sort of given it a little bit of slack because these are more or less adventure movies that you're supposed to have fun with. They're not family friendly movies per se, but
I think you mean family friendly.
oh yes, yeah, the family friendly, and it's just like, but they're PG-13 and not a hard PG-13 either. But when you go back and you do look at the Phase One films, and this was before they were being distributed by Disney, when they were mostly Paramount films, there is a seriousness they're allowed to have back then that I just don't see anymore. And I kind of hate to be the guy to say that because I usually think I'm usually the guy crying foul when people want to say things ain't what they used to be. But in the case of this, yeah, this ain't what it used to be. Like right out of the gate. And I know people have made a big stink of this, but like this, when I watched this in the theater, it stuck out to me too. Like you have Florence Pugh's character effectively gut somebody, and there's no blood at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's very noticeable. I don't like it's so odd to me that like either make that decision or don't. And I think that's like if you want to make action movies where you have like you want it to feel like the action, in this case punching and shooting and slicing and dicing and all that stuff, like if you want to make that feel like it punches and like, oh no, there's consequence to these violent actions, it being so bloodless is noticeable. And this is not just in this movie. The movie Up has more blood in it than the entire first season of Marvel's What If. And that is a show that has a zombie episode, an episode that takes place in World War II, an episode that takes place in space where everyone is punching and shooting each other. And the film Up has more blood in it. I just wanted to throw that out there. Now this movie has more blood than Up and What If and everything, but I'm not just saying that the presence of blood is necessary in order to make something feel cool. You can have it be the bloodiest thing ever, and and you could like kind of screw it up. But I don't know, like there is like a sort of restraint here that feels very aware that specifically Disney Plus exists, where my 5-year-old is watching Disney Plus. I don't want them seeing blood in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And that you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like I'm kind of
Mm-hmm.
rambling on a little bit, not quite attacking the point, but I don't know, like it's starting to feel weird. And I think this all culminates, and we've been making funny Fast and Furious references this whole time. There is a sequence in this movie that does actually feel like a Fast and Furious moment. In an action sequence that up until this point I've kind of been enjoying more or less. Um, Taskmaster blows up their car, and their car gets into the most insane car crash I've ever seen. It flips over, lands on a train, falls off the train, lands on another car, like goes over the sidewalk and tumbles down some stairs down into a subway station. And not only are they like living, not only have they survived this car crash, they like get up and say, "All right, we got to keep going." We gotta, that is like that would be like that's a Fast and the Furious 9 moment. Like I would laugh and be like, oh, it's so dumb but hilarious when I'm watching F9. But in this, like, I don't even know what the tone is supposed to be. Am I supposed to be laughing at how like ridiculous that is? These aren't super powered ladies. They're just like normal spies. And like everyone who's an assassin in this movie is so bad at their job. Like, how did Taskmaster not like them surviving an explosion is improbable, but then there's all the crashing and banging and the stuff they do, and their legs aren't broken, like for real. And then even later, so like you find out that Natasha was supposed to assassinate Mac from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull by putting a bomb in his daughter's backpack. Not only did it not blow up Mac, it didn't even blow up the girl. Like, what? Like, I don't know. I just went into like 5 different directions all at once because there was a route there that went into, I don't know. But like, sorry, I rambled there. Do you have anything to respond with that?
No, I wasn't really thinking about the action as much, but I can't disagree with what you're saying. You make a very valid point that this feels like there are no consequences, and if these were characters like, I don't know, Colossus of the X-Men, if he was in a car wreck like that, I could buy it because like, oh, I just meddled up off screen or whatever, and like, okay, I get it. But like you said, these are the two characters in the MCU who do not have any powers at all, and so we should feel like there's one scene where Florence Pugh is bleeding from her arm, and that's a plot point, and then there's one scene where we see Natasha take off her shirt and she has got bruises all over her back. And those are like the two moments where it's like, look, they're normal humans, but everything we see in this movie completely contradicts that. And I saw someone, I don't remember which video I saw this on in the comments. Somebody said, after watching this movie, I feel like Natasha should have survived that fall in Endgame. Because
yeah,
like
there's that
she
moment.
hits like yeah. You were probably going to say this too. Like she hits the vent, and like it reminds me of Bloodsport from the Suicide Squad, where he falls like 10 stories and doesn't even twist his ankle. But at least it was just that one scene in the Suicide Squad. But it's all over this movie. There are so many action scenes like where Natasha, like you would think like there's that part where she is jumping from the falling not the helicarrier, but the floating red room building, and she jumps from it, and there's like metal debris going everywhere. And you'd think like, okay, she's about to get like sliced in half by a big metal sheet. No, she's perfectly fine. She landed on the ground, not even a scratch.
That scene where she falls, it's insane. It like she falls and like hits her back. I think she hits her head on like a stone eave or something, and then she like lands in a puddle on the ground. And you'd think this is the part where the person she's pursuing goes, I can get away now. No, she stands up after falling all that. Like it's crazy. And like I don't. You're right. It's the same kind of problem I had in the Suicide Squad, because I noticed that too, where Idris Elba like flies and lands on his feet, and like how are like the lower parts of his legs not sticking up through his knees at this point? Like this is crazy. And maybe that's just the way action movies are made right now. I don't know. I don't know. It's crazy. It's like you watch the John Wick movies, and obviously the appeal of watching those is seeing John Wick just kill a bunch of people who have it coming, right? But John Wick still gets hurt. He still feels sort of vulnerable. And I feel like, like I'm just kind of describing the basics of action filmmaking, and me just saying these things, like somebody could just like be listening to this and kind of rolling their eyes and going, okay, yep. Anything new to add to the conversation? I guess not. It's just like one of those things where I'm just sort of getting a little numb to people who are just invincible in action movies. Because like while I said I think it's dumb that the only stakes in a movie is like whether or not someone will die, I'm not thinking about whether or not Natasha's going to die in this movie. I know she's not, but like what if like she gets hurt and oh no, I can't make it to that door in time, and then other people I know might die, or the information will get leaked, or some other stake, right? Like it's
Yeah.
fine. It doesn't necessarily need to be death, but like vulnerability is what leads to stakes, and like the limitations of your hero is what's cool. And I don't know, like it's different if you're making a Superman movie. In a Superman movie, like him being able to just stop the thing is like the easy part, but the mental gymnastics of how he has to outsmart the villain is the part. You know what I mean? But like in this, if it's just like a normal spy thing, I don't know. It's like they didn't. It feels like they had no interest in making a spy movie, but just kind of did because that's what Black Widow is.
I think you could pick any Superman movie, and Superman gets more injured in any of his movies than Black Widow does in this movie. And as for your spy comment, this really just feels like a generic action movie. I don't watch a lot of spy films, but I was kind of hoping we get a little bit of like, like she uses that thing from the Winter Soldier to disguise her face at one point. I was kind of hoping we get a little bit more of that, like sneaking into a building and you got to steal a thing, and then the person you're disguised as, they come in, and then the security guard says, "Wait a minute," and then they're like, lockdown. We got a lockdown because the senator's right here. Who did we let in? And something like that. Nothing like that. It really just feels there's no difference between this and I don't know, like Spider-Man Homecoming as far as like action goes, because it's the same kind of movie. And understandably, you're working in a superhero universe, so all of these are going to have superhero in their DNA. But Ghost Rider is a different kind of superhero than Black Widow. He is, Evil Knievel meets Rosemary's Baby meets superhero, and that's going to be a very different kind of story than James Bond meets superhero. Like they're all superhero stuff, but you can have different kinds of superhero stories. But this doesn't feel like that. This just feels like an action movie. I really, at no point did I feel like I was watching a spy film.
Wouldn't it be cool if she has to like sneak in? Like she's called Black Widow, and at no point in any of these movies has there been like a spider motif. What if she has to she has like special gloves, like a la Mission Impossible 4, that like stick to walls or whatever, and she's like crawling on the roof or like the ceiling of a building upside down, and she, there's like people on monitors, and oh no, she made a noise, someone looks behind them, and she has to like hide really fast. I don't know, something like,
yeah,
it's just like all the action scenes past a certain point they feel very repetitive to me. And I know that apparently there was like an initial director that was brought on board to direct this movie, and when they had talked to Kevin Feige or someone at Marvel, what this director was told, what she says she was told was, yes, great, we can't wait to have you direct the movie. Don't worry about the action, we already got that covered. And she said, what? I signed on. I wanted to make this movie so I could make cool action scenes, basically.
Yeah.
And so they really just need someone to like show up and say action and cut whenever like your actors are on set. And when it comes to the big scale crazy CGI action scenes, those are already being rendered in previs. And I know like a lot of people have already made this observation, particularly Red Letter Media, but it was something I noticed the first time out too. There is a noticeable difference between the scenes where actors are on set and when it's like a CGI action scene. Like the cinematic language feels completely different. Whenever it's like actors on a set, they're like handheld cameras, shallow depth of field, like all of these like kind of indie filmmaker sort of tendencies I've noticed. And then when it comes to like your big action scenes, all of a sudden like everything's kind of in focus. It's like really like smooth, and like the camera's floating all around and kind of doing these impossible shots because it's previs. Like, I don't know, it's disappointing.
I guess then we can be a little more slack with the director. What? I'm sorry, I've never heard of this director. What did you say her name was?
Kate Shortland. I've never seen any of her other movies. She's only made 3 or 4 others, and they're really low budget indie movies.
Okay. I guess we can give a little bit of slack to Kate Shortland then, if that's the case, that she didn't have much of a hand in the action movies. It's a shame because her name is plastered on the movie as the director. So people are going to watch this and they're going to blame her if the direction isn't any good. But I will say the parts of the movie I was the most interested in were the parts where a couple of characters were just talking. It doesn't always work. It's not always consistent. But like the first time, whenever Yelena is dressing her wound and they've got a beer, and then Yelena says like, I always imagine that you settled down with a husband in Ohio. Like, I like that scene. I wanted to see more of that. I liked seeing characters interacting with each other, even when the interactions made no sense to me. And I guess we'll have to go ahead and get into that. But that was the stuff that I enjoyed. So I guess if Kate Shortland, if she takes the Gareth Edwards, Josh Trank route of like, I started off small and now I'm getting these big budget action movies, if she gets like a Star Wars movie or an Indiana Jones 6 or whatever, I guess I will be interested. if she gets more control and she gets to do stuff like this. I liked those scenes, so I will give her props for that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's one of those movies where it's supposed to look like a mid 2000s action movie, like the Bourne movies and the early Daniel Craig, James Bond movies and whatnot. But I do think, like, even though like the color palette's pretty muted and whatnot, I think it does, visually speaking, still look pretty good, and I like the colors. And yeah, like the scene in particular that I think kind of works the best is when David Harbour and Florence Pugh are talking in like the bedroom, and he's like trying to cheer her up. Like there are some like nice touches there, and yeah, but this is kind of like one of those things where I remember, like, so obviously Marvel has like this sort of factory way of making things. Like they're whatever, I don't know, like whatever phase 7 is going to be, they're probably already rendering Fantastic Four #2 in a computer right now. And that's their way of making movies. They need to make, at one point they made 2 a year, at one point they made 3 a year, now they're making 4 a year, and I think they'll be making 5 a year pretty soon.
Not to mention TV shows on Disney Plus.
Yes, in order to like make that schedule, you need to do what they're doing. And what I find disappointing about that is there is a sort of cookie cutter mold to the action. There's a lack of authorial stamp on it, and I think the visual effects themselves have been kind of hindered. Like I remember the point in time where I was starting to notice the factory style of the Marvel machine was in Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther, where there were like really bad like green screen CGI moments, and like the stories of those two movies are very similar, and there's a little bit of difference there, and I do really like both of those movies, but there is like a sort of like lack of authorship. Like I don't know, when I watch the like Captain America: The First Avenger feels like a Joe Johnston movie.
Mm-hmm.
And and then but then it's like when you watch, and I think the two Guardians movies do feel like James Gunn movies. Those are sort of like outliers in themselves. But then like Thor Ragnarok feels like a Taika Waititi movie, kind of. It feels like a Marvel movie that's tinged like a Taika Waititi movie. Black Panther does not feel like a Ryan Coogler movie. And Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, I guess, are credited directors of Captain Marvel. It could have been directed by anybody, as far as I'm concerned. And so when you get something like this feels even more removed, and like I don't know, man. I feel like with the right now the way these movies are being cranked out and the shows are being cranked out, like what I like in like movies is sort of being like drained out of it just in an effort to like put out the movie with the name on it. I'm kind of like lost a lot of my interest in like Marvel's output.
Me too. You know me. I've been losing interest since WandaVision. I know like I was talking to a coworker who's still like fully on board with Marvel, and I don't want to be the curmudgeon that tells everyone they're wrong. But I think you and I are both kind of arriving in the same place, like for different reasons, maybe. But yeah, I used to complain about this, like the lack of, it felt like everything was just made in a factory. I used to complain about that circa like the Winter Soldier. And boy, if I could have seen the future, like it really is, it does feel worse now. And I would be happier if they slowed down and gave their writers and directors a little bit more room to be creative. I would be happier, I think. I don't have to have 5 movies a year. And of course, they want to make money, and they are going to, they have a successful formula, at least financially. But I think I would be happier in the long term if they slowed down a little bit and they gave these directors and writers like, okay, you can't go crazy. You can't have Black Widow commit genocide, but you can do, have a little bit of fun and do a little bit of crazy stuff. And I think that would be, I think people would be on board with that probably.
I think so too. There was a movie that came out over the summer called Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't very good, but I liked it more than it seems most people did, where I think I'd give that movie like a 6 out of 10. Like it's not great, but it is made with a lot more style than something like this or Shang-Chi, or any like number of Marvel movies I could point to that I admittedly do like more than the Snake Eyes movie, but like I was impressed by the style. Now that movie's style is just, what if Ridley Scott and Tony Scott made the same movie, and it's like, hey, it looks like Black Rain. It looks, like an 80s Ridley Scott movie, but I don't know. Somebody's impression of Ridley Scott is, I think, a little bit more interesting than whatever this is. But I don't know. Let's Is there anything else you want to talk about with this movie? Because I know you want to talk about the family. But
Before we get to the family, why don't we talk a little bit? Because I know you talked about like action versus not action and how they're like two, apples and oranges. But I was thinking about like how you have like there's a scene where it's supposed to be a really heartwarming scene between Red Guardian and Yelena, where he's trying to like cheer her up because and I guess this is going hand in hand with the family thing, the family thing. But like he's making a joke about like I dipped my hands into freezing water and then my dad poured urine on my hands, and it's supposed to be a haha joke, but it's right in the middle of this weird like it's supposed to be a really heartwarming scene. And I can't help but think about like the movie Iron Man. Like Tony Stark was really immature and he said lots of really funny things. And like there's the scene where the reporter says like, well, what about the Da Vinci of death? And he's like, yeah, I like that. And it's like, haha, we get it. He's a jerk, but he's funny. We're laughing. But like then you think of the scene in Iron Man where he finds out that bald guy betrayed him, and Ironmonger. I cannot. What? Wow, it doesn't matter.
Obadiah Stane.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff Bridges. I knew his name in real life, but you find out, oh, he betrayed Tony. He deliberately locked Tony out of the business, and he is continuing the war profiteering and building weapons, and innocent people are dying. Like an entire village of innocents are dead because of Tony's company. And you don't have like a funny sex innuendo seconds after Tony finds that out. Like the movie knew when to be serious and when to be funny, when to throw the jokes in. Mm-hmm. And with this movie, like you have the weird scene like where like, haha, he put urine on his hands because to keep from getting to frostbite, or like LOL, the pig isn't breathing. And it's like this is right in the middle of like we find like where they're having these like heartfelt confrontations about how like you guys were the closest thing we had to parents and now you're acting like you don't care. Like it doesn't know. And this is kind of what I was talking about, how like Black Widow's backstory is really dark. And then this movie is trying to be funny. And I think you could have done a funny movie with Black Widow, but then you would have to stay clear of anything with the Red Room. Like if you just did a normal action movie, you could even set it in between Civil War and Infinity War. And like she's trying to lay low and she accidentally gets caught up in some adventure and has nothing to do with the Red Room. You could do a funny movie then. Like A-Team, the movie, where it's like, I haven't seen the A-Team movie, but like, this guy who I feel like he kind of looks like a black Mark Ruffalo. I don't know that actor from anything, but if I'm wrong, you can tell me. But like his whole thing is like, you got us a machine that doesn't work. Like I can't land the plane, and it's like if only I had some time and money, I could have gotten you something better. Like you could do like a funny like A-Team-esque team adventure story that is funny and fits in the Marvel mold. But again, you have to stay clear of the Red Room and all of this really heartbreaking stuff that the movie doesn't want to commit to.
Yes. Speaking of humor, I don't know what the deal is. I feel like this is the Deadpoolification of the Marvel Universe, and I'm really not liking what I'm seeing. So everyone is starting to become Deadpool now. Not everybody, but there's an infection, and it's like Deadpool humor is starting to infect. Like we saw a little bit of this in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier when Sam Wilson all of a sudden out of nowhere was the guy who notices the things other characters do because he's just like you. He's seen the other Marvel movies. Like do you remember that part where he's like talking to Bucky? He's like, "Oh, Bucky, you're doing that staring thing. Oh, you're doing that staring thing, Bucky." Like, oh yes, Bucky Barnes. That Twitter really noticed how he does that staring thing. Like, what are you talking about, show? Like, this is ridiculous. And then like later, he's talking to Zemo and he's like, "Oh, Zemo, you're gonna say something crazy and then do that head tilt thing. Yep, you're doing the head tilt thing. Yes, Zemo, the man who's famous for tilting his head. Like, is that as stupid to anybody else as it is to me? God, that show is the worst. But then there's like a similar thing in this where Yelena, because I guess she is like 1/3 Deadpool, is like, hey, Natasha, you do that thing where you flip your hair. Why do you flip that hair? Are you doing that because you think someone's looking at you? Why do you keep doing the hair flippy thing? No, stop, stop. This is not funny at all. Like I'm supposed to like go, oh yeah, oh my goodness, I've seen the Marvel movies and I notice she flips her hair when she lands. I cannot express how like so cringingly irritating that is to me.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, do you think it would have like because I'm thinking that probably bothers you more than it does me. I think like it would be fine. Like there are scenes where you can do a funny exchange, but like what really bugged me about this movie was like when they would try to put those funny scenes or put those funny moments in a scene where they do not belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there.
Like I think when Yelena is pointing out that Natasha does like the pose, like that does feel like the Deadpool joke where Deadpool said, "Look, they're doing the superhero landing." Like, yeah, it kind of feels like that. And I think if the movie was more balanced, I probably would have been okay with that. At least that wasn't in the middle of a scene where Natasha like pours her heart out or something, and then it's like, "LOL, we have a joke coming." Like when Red Guardian is trying to say sorry to Natasha, and then it's like, "Just kidding, that's not Natasha he's talking to." Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like a lot of the humor, like this is probably the one where it just doesn't work for me at all. I think like in the Black Panther movie and Thor Ragnarok, I know Thor Ragnarok, like I was a little disappointed at like the Warriors 3 are like taken out without like any screen time at all, and then the movie is trying to be a comedy movie. Like I like, and it's about the death of Asgard. Like that is a little weird, but I enjoyed that movie overall. But this one, I feel like I don't know. Like when your movie is about exploiting human beings and like human trafficking, like maybe dial back on the jokes, maybe.
I agree, and like that, all that serious stuff does feel like an afterthought because of how toned down it is. And then you have that thing of like, then why did you even make this movie about that? You're
Mm-hmm.
right, like make it the A Team, where it's just kind of a silly romp with spy aesthetics. And I don't know, like you said earlier, it tries to have its cake and eat it too, and it's disappointing. I also think it's disappointing that over the last 9 years, what we've really seen Natasha do is over 9 years from Iron Man 2 through Avengers Endgame, we really saw Natasha, who this woman who had this troubled past, that she felt a lot of guilt about, but she learned how to get over it, and get through that and process her past, and she did this by coming together and connecting with her surrogate family, the Avengers. So when we finally get her solo movie, her character arc is that she has a troubled past, and now she has to confront it by embracing her surrogate family. Oh, it's a
Yep.
different surrogate family. How many surrogate families are we going to give this lady?
Yeah. And that was a weird thing. I thought, like, so at the beginning of the movie, she is in a building. She's surrounded by General Thunderbolt Ross and his men, which, by the way, he's already the Secretary of State at this point. Does he really need to personally go on these missions to try and take out like a super spy who could kill him? Like, he just got like a heart replacement. Like, but anyway, and they even mentioned that in the movie. But yeah, so she's there and she says, "I'm retiring. I'm done." And then she escapes. She drops her phone in the water, and then she goes to live in a trailer somewhere. And Black Mark Ruffalo is giving her the trailer and the generator and stuff. She doesn't seem to be interested in like breaking out the Avengers who have been captured. And then at the end of the movie, she says, "Well, if we can make this work as a family, I can make it work with the Avengers. I'm gonna go break them out." And I was like, "What? Where did that come from? Why?" Like I was legitimately confused, and you will have to explain to me how this works because I think I missed something. I was confused, like why her getting along with Sheriff Hopper and Evie and Little Women, why she's able to get along with them, and that has something to do with her going and breaking out the Avengers. Like, did she have a falling out with the Avengers like seconds before they all broke the Sokovia Accords, and then I'm confused. I legitimately am confused.
I am also confused. I did want to just quickly say, when you called her sort of guy who gets her stuff Black Mark Ruffalo, I didn't realize that's who you're saying. I thought you were talking about the Mr. T stand-in from the 2010 A-Team
Oh,
movie. I thought
oh,
you were
okay.
calling him Black Mark Ruffalo. I'm like, I mean, he's hulkingly strong, that's for sure. I can't really remember what his face looks like, but
I can't either. No, I've never seen the A-Team movie, so I know Bradley Cooper is in it, and I know Liam Neeson is in it. I don't know who the other guys are.
yeah. I have seen it, and it's been a minute, so I can't. Okay, now I know who you're talking about when you're talking about Black Mark Ruffalo. I'm also confused by that. It does feel like it's just sort of like a really quick excuse to just say, now we tied it into Avengers Infinity War. You guys like that movie? It's all connected. It's one big story. It's one big universe.
Yeah, but like at the beginning, like
Now you feel rewarded for watching this in timeline order and not release date order.
yeah, I don't know. It doesn't work for me. Like I didn't understand why Natasha was willing to let everyone else just hang. And I get it. Like in Civil War, I will give Civil War a lot of props. It is probably the only hero versus hero story that I actually like. I think that just about every character in that movie, their motivations make sense for choosing to do what they do. With the exception of Black Widow, who's just kind of all over the place in that movie. Like at the beginning, she's on Team Iron Man, and then later she's on. And like they even mention, they say, "Weren't you the one who released all of Shield's information to the world?" And like we have to be more like like maybe the government isn't like the good guys we thought they were. And she's like, I'm just weighing our options here. And then like she's on Team Iron Man, even though she acted that way in Winter Soldier, and then she's on Team Cap, and like I guess maybe it's like, well, she's just very self-serving. And so now that like half the Avengers have been in prison, she says, peace, see you later. I'm going to go live my life. Like it doesn't feel, and maybe like part of the problem is we haven't gotten to focus a lot on Natasha in these movies yet. Like she's been a side character, but in a lot of them, she's barely like, she gets a scene in Avengers. She barely gets anything in Iron Man 2. Like Winter Soldier is probably the one she has the most screen time in, and we don't know a lot about her. She's mostly just there to be like a counter to Steve. Steve is idealistic, and she is like dark, shadowy government. And so like there's not we haven't gotten to get to know her yet. And so at the beginning of this, when she's like, "Peace, I don't care about the Avengers," that's weird to me. But at the same time, since we haven't gotten to know her yet, I guess then like, okay, I guess that does make sense. I don't know.
I think Natasha has been one of those characters that's been really roughly handled. I would agree with you there. Just kind of generally throughout. I feel like whatever is needed of a supporting character at any given time in any given movie, she just kind of serves that function. And it's sort of a little disappointing because you have this character who's like shown up in a bunch of times, and it just feels like they bring in Black Widow because, well, she's a real Avenger, it's authentic if you bring her in as opposed to some, kind of generic random other supporting character. And now that she has her own movie, I feel like I don't understand who she really is as a character beyond I'm really conflicted about my past. I just want to do the right thing now. And
Mm-hmm.
like whatever the right thing is does sort of feel arbitrary to whoever's writing it.
Yeah. Um, so I guess we should talk about family. Um, Connor, I am once again going to need you to explain some things to me because I am
Okay.
confused. So at the very beginning of the movie, we see these two kids, and I figured pretty quickly that this was Natasha and Yelena because I mean, I already had spoiled myself on the movie. I knew that we were going to have Natasha's sister in it, so I figured, okay, that's who this is. And then we see what's her face from The Mummy, and then David Harbour comes in, and then we get the feeling that both David Harbour and Evie are like really tore up about what they're going to have to do. And then it's like, come on, kids, we got to go. We got to go on the run. And then like they're being chased by SHIELD agents. And then like David Harbour flips a trailer with his hand. And then he's like jumping on the airplane and they're like being shot at. And I'm really excited. I'm like, oh, cool. What's going on here? Like, I'm very interested in what's going on. And then they get to Cuba, and David Harbour is hugging the guy who ends up being the bad guy of the movie. And then the soldiers are about to kidnap Yelena, and then Natasha grabs a gun and is like pointing at them, like, "Leave my sister alone." And David Harbour is like, "Come on, you don't do that. It's okay. You guys will be fine." And then like 20 something years later, everyone in the movie, like Yelena and Natasha are for some reason not on speaking terms, and you'll have to explain that to me also because I feel like I missed something. And then when they all reunite, you get this feeling that David Harbour and Evie did not care about these two at all. Like they're acting like you guys were just a mission. And at one point, David Harbour even says, "I didn't even want to do that mission. That was really boring. I hated it." And then like he says that, and then seconds later he sings American Pie by Don McLean, and that's apparently supposed to make everything better because he remembers Yelena's favorite song. And I'm sorry, but no, like you willingly turned them over to this guy who turned them into slaves, and you didn't seem to have any problem with it, and now you're acting like everything's a-okay. Like I think this could like have you've never watched the TV series Fringe, have you?
No.
Okay, so in that, you have this FBI agent who finds out that there's some weird mad science stuff going on in Boston, and she is going to have to get to the bottom of it. And this one guy who used to deal in weird mad science, he's been in a mental institution for like the last 30 something years, and or 20 something, I don't know. And so she needs his help investigating all this. But the mental institution will not sign off on his release unless he has a family member there, a family member there. And so she has to go track down this guy's son, Joshua Jackson, and he has to basically babysit his dad, who's Denethor from Lord of the Rings. And there is a hostility between the father and the son because the father was not there for the son, and the son is bitter about that even some 20 years later. And where it works with Fringe is that you have a lot of time to explore that. And even though Peter Bishop says that he's still angry at his father, there are times where he's willing to risk his life to save his father. So there is still a loving relationship there, but it is very tense. And they have episode and episode and episode where they can build on that. This is a 2-hour movie, and you are having to balance the action stuff with this air quotes plot, and you don't have enough time to make me buy that this family is able to have this complex relationship with each other and also still love each other at the end. I don't buy it when they're all like hugging on each other and doing the hands in thing, like, yeah, grab each other's hands. Woohoo. Yeah, we did it. I don't buy it after the behavior that we have seen from these parental figures.
Yeah, I agree. I think like you see some more compassion coming from Rachel Weisz. I think when she's like kind of when she has to say, it means nothing to me, or she has to gesture towards that, it does feel a little bit more like a front. But when it comes to Red Guardian, I don't really get it. Is it like something because it's like he really actually secretly care deep down underneath? But I feel like running away and having to turn everyone over, like that would be the hardest part for him. But he kind of does it really willingly, like it's so like I don't know, like it's and so then like years later when he's like, no, actually I do love you like a father, it kind of rings a little hollow because you're seeing what he's willing to trade, his children for, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it is like I don't know, like it's not. It feels like they're trying to like present this character as like really conflicted and complicated, and it doesn't really, I think, come across that way. It just kind of comes across as whatever we need this character to feel like, oh, he's vaguely parental. Yeah, I don't know. But as far as like a question you had earlier about like how like Yelena and Natasha aren't on like speaking terms, I think what happens is they lost contact with one another because once they got back to Cuba, uh, they separated the two. Where um, Natasha went to go do one thing, and I think she'd already been trained, or she needed to go to like the Red Room, and then like the Yelena went to another like Black Widows Junior School or something. I don't know. I guess the implication I got is that they split them up, and they use magic mist to like break the conditioning, and now she is able to find Natasha and track her down and get back into contact with her. And isn't there a line about how Natasha says that she tried finding Yelena but couldn't, and that's probably because of like the Black Widow, uh, um, like I don't know, the Black Widow program is like kind of scrambled her tracks or whatever. I feel like there's
I
a line about that.
Maybe there was. I know at one point, so Natasha is like minding her own business, and then Taskmaster attacks her, and then Natasha goes and finds Yelena, and then for some reason they fight, and then like they nearly kill each other. This isn't like a like, haha, it's good to see you, old friend. We need to fight more often. It's like these two literally are like strangling each other with a bed sheet, and then it's like, oh wait, truce, and then like Natasha says, I didn't think you wanted to see me again, or I didn't think you wanted to speak to me anymore. And so my question is, okay, was there some
Oh,
kind of adventure that these two were on where Natasha screwed over her sister and they're mad at each other? Like, I the easiest thing in the world is to say, I thought you were dead. If you find yourself asking the question, why did Natasha go however many movies that she's been in without telling anybody that she had a sister who's also in the Red Room? Like in Age of Ultron, when she says, hey, I really like to shower with white Mark Ruffalo. And it's like, oh, I used all the hot water. And then she says, well, I had a sister who's in the Red Room. And also they sterilized us. Like, that would have been the
uh-huh.
moment. But like, if you found out in this movie when she sees Yelena and she like, oh, Yelena, you're still alive. And Yelena would be like, yeah, you knew that or something like that. And it's like, no, I didn't. Like, and there could be a sense of hostility there because Yelena thinks that Natasha just stabbed her in the back and ran away and went and joined the Avengers and never bothered tearing down the Red Room. Whereas Natasha would say, I thought that the Red Room was torn down. I thought you were dead. I thought mom and dad were dead. Like,
Uh-huh.
that's the easiest thing in the world to say, like, I didn't know you guys were still alive. But and they even say that with Rachel Weisz. That I finally remembered her name.
Hmm.
And they say that we're like, oh, we thought she was dead. But like the whole relationship between sister and sister I think could have worked it very easily. You could have just said, like, we grew up, like, we were both in the Red Room together, and then some mission happens, and then maybe the Red Room people told Natasha that Yelena was dead, and vice versa. Or maybe they told Natasha Yelena was dead, and they told Yelena your sister abandoned you, or something like that. And like that way we can create a more ruthless soldier who's fueled by anger and rage, or something like that.
Hmm.
And I don't know, like I just felt like none of the relationships in this movie worked like they thought it did.
Yes, specifically, like for me, the one that feels the most undercooked is Rachel Weisz's connection with them,
Hmm.
where it's sort of hinted that like, oh, she's actually a mastermind, and then they get to meet her, and then I guess just seeing her daughters again like makes it so that she can like double cross by like using the good will that she's built up with Mac to like double cross him.
Hmm.
And there's like a weird there's that bit with the pig where like she's able to control the pigs to stop breathing, and that feels like a setup for a payoff that doesn't really come.
Right.
Like
The
when did
only sense we do get to see that the widows are like earlier in the movie the widow shoots herself in the face and she's ordered to do it. So I guess it's like a reverse Chekhov's gun where we see a gun being fired and then later we see the gun. But by that point, like
yeah.
I don't care. Like I was able to intuit that, oh, okay, he has mind control powers over these women. Like I didn't need to
Mhm.
see we stole some technology from Hydra and that allowed us to do this thing that affected you two. Like, oh, okay, I kind of got that. Like I didn't need these two in particular to be crucial in the Black Widow programming. I could have just picked up that yeah, they're under mind control.
Yeah, I suppose so. Like, but it's just kind of one of those things where they. What I mean was that bit with the iPad and the pig is sort of supposed to demonstrate her ability. Like,
Oh
ooh,
yeah,
this is a thing she's got. Like, oh, when is she going to use this moving forward? Oh, she doesn't.
yeah,
Like,
good point.
it's just kind of like weird, and um, they do try to like play it off like because she is a pretty high ranking member in like the whole Red Room operation that oh she actually betrayed them and alerted Mac to their whereabouts and she double crossed them, and then they do like a sort of like a double like a fake out where they're like oh actually Natasha and Rachel Weisz like they swapped faces, right?
Hmm.
And by the way, just taking off your mask is enough to let me know that I don't need to flashback to a scene that happened in between other scenes. Like I got it where it's like takes off mask. It's actually Rachel Weisz. And then it
Hmm.
flashes back to like 10 minutes ago. And it's like you see a scene with Rachel Weisz and Scarlett Johansson going, all right, we need to switch faces to trick them. Like, yep, I got it. I've seen enough Mission Impossible movies where they rip the mask off to reveal that it's actually not who you thought it was. It's like the best gag in all of the Mission Impossible movies, except for Mission Impossible 2. That one actually overuses it somehow. But in all the other ones, whenever like they do the, haha, we tricked you, we're actually wearing a different mask. Like I was wearing a mask the whole time. It gets me every time. I love it. This one they do that. I'm like, okay, great. They did a Mission Impossible mask reveal. Great. And they just like tell you what, like, no, stop. You're fine. I don't know. Like that's kind of this movie in a nutshell though, and that's frustrating.
That reminds me of the TV series Leverage, which does that a lot, where like they have a mark who is some kind of like person who abuses their power, and they use their authority or their position to hurt the little man. And so Leverage, which is the group, is basically like a modern day Robin Hood. Like they tear down and they bring justice to the little man because the law won't touch them. Or I'm sorry, they bring justice to the big man because the law won't touch them. And like you'll see like some blonde woman will accidentally bump shoulders with the target. And then, like, later on in the episode, you'll do a flashback showing her, like, pickpocketing him so that she can plant evidence on him or something. And someone called out one of the producers of the show, and he said, one time we tried to not do that, and 80% of our audience didn't understand what was going on. Like, we have to show that. We have to do the flashback to show what we're doing. And so, yes, it is like blatantly obvious what's going on. I can kind of see them saying like, test audiences didn't understand. Test audiences are stupid. We have to make it even more blatantly obvious. So
test audiences thought there were clones of Scarlett Johansson running around. Honestly, that would have been a better ending, you know. But here's the thing though. Then like later, so Mac has Poison Ivy from Batman and Robin pheromone powers, where he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be all right. I got pheromone powers." And then he even just says, "If you can smell me like a dog, I guess that means you can't hurt me." And then it's like Natasha already knows this because we get another Leverage style flashback to Natasha or to Rachel Weisz telling Natasha, you need to like break your nose at some point because you can't hurt him because he has Poison Ivy powers. And so then like, I feel like the structure and editing of that is just all wrong. Like Natasha already knows this, but the audience does. So when, Mac reveals that he has pheromone powers, like she has to play it like a surprise. And then we find out later that she already knew it and she knows the weakness. And then like Mac says, as long as you can smell me, ain't nothing's gonna stop me or whatever. Then it's like, okay, you actually don't even need the reveal that Natasha knew the whole time, because in that scene all by itself, like we find out Natasha has all the information because Mac monologued at him. And it's like, I feel like it would be better because it makes Natasha look a lot more quick-witted, and like the stakes are constantly evolving. It kind of like defangs the danger of the action scene when, she knew it all. She knew all of this already. She's just been playing him. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm. I think I've said everything about the family. So the only other big thing I had here, and there may be a few minor things, the villain. Connor, I want to read from you a portion from the Arthur Conan Doyle novel, The Final Problem, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
In this book, up until this point, we have not seen Professor Moriarty, we the audience. And so Sherlock Holmes is explaining who Professor Moriarty is to his sidekick, John Watson. He is the Napoleon of crime, Watson. He is the organizer of half that is evil and of nearly all that is undetected in this great city. He is a genius, a philosopher, an abstract thinker. He has a brain of the first order. He sits motionless like a spider in the center of its web, but that web has 1,000 radiations, and he knows well every quiver of each of them. He does little himself. He only plans. Okay, so from that paragraph, now, I mean, I've seen like Moriarty in movies and stuff, but just from this paragraph, I feel like I know so much about this guy because not only is Sherlock Holmes saying that he is an evil mastermind, but he's also saying he is an abstract thinker and a philosopher. And so I can imagine, I don't know if this happened, probably not, but I can imagine like even though Holmes and Moriarty hate each other and they're on opposite sides of the law and they wish that their opponents were taken off the board, I can imagine like Holmes going to like some lecture on astronomy and he sees Moriarty there and they sit next to each other and it's like, yeah, I know that you did the thing. And Moriarty says, yeah, but you can't prove it. So why don't we both enjoy this like scholarly lecture thing and then we can trade notes on like what we thought of it. Like even though they're enemies, like Moriarty feels real to me. He feels like a real person who like he's more than just wahaha, I am evil. So I would like to ask you a question. Can you tell me anything about the bad guy of this movie?
Well, he's Mac
Yeah,
from,
uh,
and
the angry beaver from Chronicles of Narnia.
he's the garbage cat from Cats.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't. He's misogynistic. He doesn't like
Yeah,
women.
that was
That's
the only thing I had. He says something like the only commodity this world has too much of, women, people with boobs, the XX chromosome, and I'm just like, I want something more. I again, going back to Iron Man 1, Obadiah Stane, before we find out he's evil, I feel like I know him. He feels jolly. He's friendly with Tony. And even when he like after we know that he's a bad guy and Pepper knows that he's a bad guy and he sits down next to Pepper and he's like, "You are really lucky to have Tony and Tony is really lucky to have you." And you think he's going to do something evil like backhander and like shooter or something because he's evil. He's a bad guy and that's what he does. But he doesn't. He just talks about how fortunate she and Tony are to have each other. And I like that. I like that even though he's a bad guy, we get a little bit of real emotions from him, real human characteristics. And for a long time, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, while people on the whole like these movies, I think everyone agreed that the villains were almost always the weakest part of each movie. And up until I don't remember what order they were, but by the time you got to like Kilgrave, or I'm sorry, not Kilgrave, Killmonger, Ego, and the Vulture, I think that was when it's like, okay, this is like the best that the villains have been. Before that, all the villains are pretty one-dimensional, but I feel like this feels like it's going right back, like 5 steps further back. Like, take the like. I feel like Malekith the Accursed is a better villain than this guy, and I hate Malekith the Accursed. He's a nothing character, and this guy is better than, or this guy is worse than that. Like, I think part of the problem is in literally the first half of the movie. I noted at one point I was like, oh, we're halfway into the movie and we've only seen the bad guy once, and that's in the very beginning of the movie. He has one line of dialogue. He says, "Oi, did you get the thing?" "Yeah, I got the thing." "Good. All right, now take in the girl." Like that's all we get. And then for half the movie, we don't even see him. And I, at least in any other movie, like in Captain Marvel, I kind of complained that Jude Law I didn't feel like he had much of a relationship with Vers. But at least we got to see him in the movie. Like we didn't. This is a nothing villain. Am I wrong? Or is there anything going on here I'm missing?
No. It's. I feel like he's a really lame villain. I don't know. Like there's. It's. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to do like a sort of post Harvey Weinstein type bad guy who takes advantage of women and controls them, mind controls them, and he's like a predator or whatever. And Scarlett Johansson tries to punch him, but even though he's like a fat little man, she can't because he's just got that power or whatever. It feels so weak to me, and like I like so much of what he's embodying. I just feel like the movie's not about. And that's sort of what we were talking about earlier, where like this is a spy movie that's not really interested in being a spy movie. It has like themes of you know uh, trafficking and like all these kind of dark aspects that the movie just isn't interested in being about until like the 2 or 3 scenes where it like kind of pretends to be. And it's so kind of frustrating that like the bad guy is just like emblematic of like 2% of the movie, because the movie's not really interested in having him as a bad guy. It's more interested in how can we like blow up his base and then like fight Taskmaster and that kind of. I don't know. It's a weak villain. I honestly until we started talking about this and I looked up at castles, I forgot Ray Winstone was even in this movie.
Yeah. And the whole time I was watching it, I kept thinking, hasn't he already been in a superhero movie? And I was confusing him with Punisher Warzone, which is Ray. I should have looked this up. Ray Stevenson, yes, who is also Volstagg. And so I get all the Rays confused. There's Ray Winstone, Ray Stevenson, Ray Fisher. They all,
Ray Romano.
Yeah, Ray Romano. Wouldn't it have been a better movie if Ray Romano was the bad guy? Like, hey, Natasha, my brother, he's really tall,
Hey,
the
one thing the world's got too much of is women, Double X chromosomes, what's that all about, huh? Oh.
Yeah. So those are the big things of the movie for me. I do have a few smaller things, but did you have any other little things about the movie that you wanted to address?
Well, one big thing I wanted to say is that I don't really like this movie. We've been really negative on it. I do think it's a very mediocre 5 out of 10 kind of average movie. But in the few shots where Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, and Rachel Weisz share the frame, it is the best movie that's ever been made. So that's not nothing. But other parts of the movie I kind of liked was I complained that there wasn't enough variety in the action scenes, and I do find that true. I do think early on, though, those action scenes are pretty cool. Like you alluded to earlier, the pre opening credits sequence where they're on the run, they get on a plane, and the David Harbour superpowers almost they feel like really cool because of how like you did not expect him to have superpowers. He just looks like some guy, right? He doesn't look like Captain America. He kind of has like a little bit of a beer gut. It's kind of cool. And then like later on when Natasha's just minding her own business and then she gets into a fight with Taskmaster, I thought that was a really cool fight scene. And like, the sort of Taskmaster replicating other people's super moves was kind of cool. And then like when Natasha and Florence Pugh fought each other, that was kind of cool because it was kind of neat to see like a Black Widow versus Black Widow fight where Black Widow does the sort of throws the legs around the neck move, and then Black Widow Jr. like counters by doing the exact same thing. It was kind of cool how the choreography was planned out.
That's how I want to die.
You and me both, man. So, but then like after that action sequence, like all of the action scenes are we got to run away from something. There's something chasing us. Boom, boom, bang. And even honestly, to a certain degree, all of the action scenes I laid out are I got to get away from the bad guy. Boom, boom, bang. There's like more creativity and like the smaller scale of it makes it cooler. I think when it just gets so overblown, the repetition gets so tiring.
Yeah. I agree. I didn't have much else to say about that. I guess, do you want to talk about the post-credit scene?
Yeah. Let's...
So anyone who go watch our podcast on Falcon and Winter Soldier. Neither of us liked Elaine from Seinfeld in that we didn't really understand what was going on with her. And like the Falcon and Winter Soldier, she's trying to be funny, but like it wasn't a joke. She just comes in and it's like she's wearing boots, and so she walks in and says, well, these boots aren't made for walking. Like, it didn't make sense. It was just weird. And then in this, so like we have a heartbreaking scene where Yelena is at Natasha's grave. This takes place sometime after Endgame, and she's crying. And then we hear someone blowing their nose, and it's Elaine from Seinfeld. And then she says, I'm allergic to the Midwest. Wah, wah. Once again, I don't get, like, she was from a comedy show that lasted like 10 years and she was funny in it. I don't understand how you make Julie Louis-Dreyfus not funny. I don't get it. And it's not this movie's problem. It's the whole, like, nobody knows what they're doing with her because the Falcon and Winter Soldier, she wasn't funny either. And so like I don't get that. But furthermore, so the whole movie is about you don't have to be a violent killer anymore, who works for some nameless organization. You can make your own choices. Black Widow says that to the freed Black Widows, the other ones. She says, you guys can go do whatever you want now. And then Yelena decides to become an assassin for a nameless government organization. Did anyone else have a problem with that, or is everyone cool with that direction her character is taking?
Well, it sounds like she's really doing a good job of carrying on the Black Widow mantle, because that's basically what the Black Widow character has been the entire cinematic universe. You're right.
Yeah.
By the way, Black Widow doing that at the end, where she's like, "You're free. You can do whatever you want," and they all just kind of like look around, like, "I guess so." Um,
Hmm.
that reminded me of the ending of The People Under the Stairs, where they're like, "You're free, people under the stairs. Go do what you want." And they look like hideous, scary monsters. Like, what's that guy gonna do?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I like it in The People Under the Stairs because like that movie kind of feels like a fairy tale to a certain degree, where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, the point is they get to go out and do their own thing. Are we gonna like have like scenes or like movies where like Black Widows are just gonna show up and start like applying at Stark Industries? Like, I need a job. You got need a
Mhm.
receptionist? I don't know.
Uh,
Yeah.
I would like in the end of this movie it starts playing "Do the Right Thing" and like you know how like the house was like exploded and didn't the house explode and people under the stairs? Am I
Yes, that
misremembering?
happened. Yeah.
Okay, and so like you got the red room is like falling and debris is like burning all around them and they're like all the Black Widows are kind of walking around like yeah and like Shield agents are like walking around like what are we doing with these women? We got all these women here. But
Do the
yeah
right
I
thing. We're talking about a black and white thing because that was legit. Whatever,
yeah.
whatever the lyrics are. I used to know all the lyrics to that song, but never
You got about as far as I could. But yeah, I here's the thing. I know that like if Yelena said, "I want to be an artist," or I want to run an orphanage," something positive. Like I was taken as a child and turned into a weapon. I want to help children who have no parental figures. I want to help put them in the world and show them that you can do it. That would be very boring as far as like a superhero movie goes because nobody wants to watch an action movie about someone who runs an orphanage or somebody who is, an artist or a novelist or whatever. I get that. But at the same time, her choosing to do exactly what she's always done when the whole point was you guys can go do whatever you want seems really weird. Like maybe I was reading too much into that. Maybe she was more talking to the others and it's like, no, Yelena, not you. You but like I don't know. That one kind of stuck in my brain. Like, hang on a second, this is weird.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. That was honestly something I didn't think about because I was kind of deadened by the movie at that point. I was like, okay,
Hmm.
at the end, great. And I kind of, in the back of my head, knew Florence Pugh was probably just going to keep playing this character. So whatever they say at the end of this doesn't really matter. And
Yeah.
hey, you know what? That turned out to be the case. But let's talk.
I
I have not talked about the post credit scene because this has the worst post credit scene. It's the worst one. I I I cannot express to you the pain of seeing that in the theater. Was everyone around me going, "Whoa, that's from the show," and then I audibly I don't talk in movie theaters. I audibly went, "Oh God, no." And I made a noise like I was in pain because oh my, I hate this character so much. She is not funny, and I I and now it's like, ooh, you got to go fight Hawkeye. Be sure to watch the new Hawkeye show. Okay, whatever.
yeah. I will say, even though I had like pretty much like I was watching reviews of the show deliberately or watching reviews of this movie deliberately because at the time it came out, I had no intention of ever watching it. I somehow did not find out about the Hawkeye thing. I knew that Elaine comes and recruits Yelena, but I just thought it was like I'm putting together a Dark Avengers. Like I have a Captain America, now I need a Black Widow, and now who knows who will join her team? Like Ghost maybe from Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know, but I I did not. I will say I think it could be interesting. It does feel like a advertisement for Disney Plus. But I will say because I didn't see that coming, where she busts out the picture of Hawkeye and says, "I want you to kill Hawkeye." I think potentially it could be interesting seeing these two characters who are both very close with Natasha be at odds with each other. But I still don't care about this character that Elaine is playing, and also I feel like because I've been pretty consistently uh, disappointed with everything in this phase. I just don't know if I'm going to care whenever they finally do square off against each other.
I have no reason why I should care because I feel like I already know they're gonna fight for like 2 seconds and then they're gonna talk and it's like, wait, you're not a bad guy?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. And then they're gonna team up. I mean, hey, I want to give the Hawkeye show a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Like, I didn't see the trailer for it because all the trailers for all these Disney Plus Marvel shows have actually been really good and been consistently disappointed. So um, I'm going to save myself the potential disappointment, but I want to, like this new Hawkeye show. I like Jeremy Renner in this role. It'd be kind of nice to see him have more to do. I like Haley Steinfeld a lot, and I'm excited to see what she'll do. And like, I like Florence Pugh. Maybe she'll show up in something. I don't know, but like, when it comes to like Marvel and like what we were talking about earlier about like the kind of factory nature of it, I just don't know how much longer I'm gonna like actually try to watch all of these as they're coming out, because I watched every episode of What If. That show's bad. Like, it's not good. There's one good episode. A lot of people will tell you, a comics kid, that it's a great, amazing, one of the best things in the Marvel universe. No, it's not. It's not. It's good. It's good. The Doctor Strange episode is solid and it's fine. And because it's the What If show, the last two episodes take the moral of that episode and flush it down the toilet because fan service. Like, I hate that show so much. Still better than Loki. Still better than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but not by much. Whatever.
Yeah, I was never interested in What If. Even a friend of mine who is really a diehard fan of the MCU, he said it was just kind of fine. So that tells me a lot. Looking at the animation, I thought the animation, I didn't really like that. I don't know what it is. It's like they're trying to look realistic, but it still looks like a cartoon. Like the animation wasn't working for me. But also, like, after being disappointed with the previous 3 Disney Plus shows, I was like, oh, I don't care about any of this anymore. But like, with Hawkeye, I don't know if I'm going to watch it because I already, like I said, disappointed with the other 3. I don't see that they're going to be able to pull this. Let's see if we can make this one work. Maybe they'll make it work. I don't know. You could get to the end of it. You could tell me that it's the best of the Disney Plus shows, but I don't know. I feel like at the end of Endgame, I think I would have preferred that for a while that they just kind of do these low key, like lower level, smaller stakes movies, and then build up to something big like they did. Basically repeat what they did with the Infinity Saga. Start small and then get bigger as you go. But they're not wanting to do that. They still want to maintain the momentum and the stakes that they had with movies that came out like right before Infinity War, and I feel like that's losing me rather than keeping me going.
I would agree with that. I don't know if you have any interest in watching Shang-Chi, but I like if we'll ever talk about that. But when it comes to the post-credit scene of Black Widow and What If, like the What If all leads up to, what if all of the people in these standalone stories did a Guardians of the Multiverse team up? Oh, that completely defeats the purpose of What If in my mind. And then, but it's let's put together another team of Avengers, because getting a team together was like so exciting in 2012, and now it's, oh, what if a bad guy, I guess it's the bad guy, is like gonna get a new team of Avengers that includes a new Captain America and a new Black Widow, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's trying to like stay big, but like as quick as possible assemble a new team, and I don't really want to see that. Like, come up with something new. Oh wait, the new thing that they're coming up with is a multiverse gimmick that makes no sense at all. Oh, okay, yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm kind of talking in circles at this point, but anyways, that's all I got. That's all I got for this show or this movie.
So, would you recommend Black? No, I'm just kidding. I don't think I have anything else to say. I'll probably watch Shang-Chi eventually. It's going to be really hard for me not to pronounce it Shang-Chi. This is what I get when I read comic books, and it's like a text medium. Like, for years, I pronounced the Mutant Nation. I pronounced it Genosha with a hard G, and then everyone is like, no, you're wrong. It's Genosha with a soft G. Oh, and like the multiple man, I always thought it was Madrox, but it's Madrox. And so I always thought it was Shang-Chi. And now, like, Black Panther, I always thought it was Chala with a silent T. So I think from now on I just need to assume that like Cyclops, his real name is actually Scott Summers. I think that's the direction I need to go with pronouncing every character's name.
Yeah. I used to say Shang-Chi too, but Maybe in the comics it is Shang-Chi, but in this adaptation it's Shang-Chi, like Constantine style,
Or Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al
Yeah,
Ghul.
there you go. It all depends on what you're talking about.
I will die before I say Raish. Everyone, hear me? I will say Ra's with my dying breath. No, yeah.
Oh, me too. Me too. I am Team Raz, not Team Raish.
Good. Now we just have to convert the rest of the world by the sword. So that's all that we have to say about the Black Widow movie. We talked about this longer than I thought we would. I didn't think we would have that much to say, but I'm glad that we weren't. I mean, I was disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. At this point, I've been disappointed with just about everything since Endgame. I liked Far From Home better, but I don't like it as much as Homecoming. So in retrospect, I was a little more disappointed with Far From Home when I saw that it was trying to be like, what if all of Paris was blown up instead of it's just like a small story? And I think I maybe said that on camera, but this whole phase of the MCU has been really disappointing to me. And so as long as I'm still mooching off your Disney Plus, I'll probably keep watching, but I'm not in like a big hurry to watch these movies or shows.
Yeah. I will say I like this movie more than Loki, and I like it more than Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I liked it more than What If. So progress.
Yeah.
Question.
I mean, I like getting kicked into particulars more than I like Loki, but I probably liked it more than those as well. Not saying much, but I'd say I would agree with that. Oh, by the way, did you think that the vest thing? Were you getting Wolverine X-Men Origins Wolverine vibes from that? where it's like, this is where he got the jacket.
I'm gonna be completely honest. I didn't even remember that Black Widow wore a vest.
Me neither. And so whenever she takes it off and gives it to her, I was like, is that a thing? Like, I don't know. The whole this is the origin of Barry Allen's bow tie. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
People wear clothes. No one cares where I got this shirt. My sister gave it to me. That's where I got the shirt. Hey, I have something in common with Natasha. Her sister gave it to her. We don't need to make a movie out of me getting this shirt.
I don't even know. I didn't even realize that was the same vest until the last shot where she's like, time for me to. She has the blonde hair. She's like, it's time for me to go join Avengers Infinity War. Like, oh, it's the same costume. Okay. Oh, okay. I don't even really. Yeah, it's like I guess X-Men Origins Wolverine is a good example of that. I feel like a lot of, honestly, Phase 4 is just, here is how Wanda got her Scarlet Witch costume, and this is a 6-hour origin story of Anthony Mackie's Captain America costume, and this is how Black Widow got her costume. Like a lot of, and not to spoil Shang-Chi, but here's how Shang-Chi got his costume. Like, it's all of that, and I'm like, really don't get it.
Hey, people love clothes. We got it.
Hey, you know what? I too wear clothes because I enjoy living in civilized society. So
wait, how did you get your clothes?
Oh, I bought it. Yeah, I know it's not as exciting as getting it gifted by Florence Pugh, but hey, if Florence Pugh ever wants to buy me clothes, I will gracefully accept it. So
yep. So I know we've been threatening to end this thing for a while. I am the Comics Kid 2099,
and I'm Jonesy.
and we will see you guys in the future. Have a good one.